So, as you might know, the reform of Ireland's abortion laws last year is considered a major victory and success for the country, both by people living in Ireland, but also in the eyes of Ireland's status internationally. It's raised its profile in terms of its approaches towards sexual and reproductive rights, but also in realizing the human rights of women and girls. So in affecting that change, parliamentarians played a really key role. I'll kind of take it a step back and say that the public had been ready for legal change on abortion for a long time. We commissioned polling in 2015, which showed that 87% of the country wanted some form of change. They didn't exactly know what legal model they wanted instead, but that they knew the status quo wasn't working and it wasn't respecting women and girls' rights. As part of our process of law reform, more and more parliamentarians started coming out and discussing the issue and agreeing to look at it and take it under consideration. Some of this took the form of a special parliamentary committee that was tasked with looking at our constitutional ban, which prohibited abortion, and then also looking at, well, if we were to remove the ban, what would replace it? What sort of legal structure would regulate abortion? And that committee's work was really interesting, in part because they heard from legal experts, medical experts, women who'd been denied abortion services. They heard from international human rights experts and health experts. The World Health Organization in particular gave very good advice. And the Guttmacher Institute, I don't know if you're familiar, I think that they're a Dutch-based NGO that gathers statistics on abortion worldwide. And you know, as they discussed and looked at the issue in depth and looked at the evidence, which is something that hadn't happened before in Ireland, usually it's a very heated debate between two sides, not a calm, rational debate looking at evidence and facts. So once they looked at the facts, they saw that you know, our abortion laws weren't stopping abortions from happening. They only made those abortions more costly, more traumatic, and less safe for the women involved. So a real consensus developed around whatever framework we have, it must put women's safety and well-being at the center. And you know, in addition to this specific parliamentary committee to look at our new law, there's always been a parliamentary committee, or for I think at least a decade now, there's been a parliamentary committee looking at issues of sexual and reproductive rights, which helps just to bring the conversation forward a little bit. But the work of this committee was crucial. They basically made the blueprint for our new law and presented it to the people and said, if you vote for this change to our constitution, this is the legislation we intend to bring in. And in that way, you kind of had national consensus or some national agreement about what sort of law we should have. And people really welcomed the bravery of parliamentarians in speaking out on this issue.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think, parliamentarians in Ireland, they didn't believe the polling, which said that 80% of people want change, but the people really wanted change. It's actually funny, because I was reading in one of our news headlines, the Minister for Health, there's a vote of no confidence. There have been some scandals around his office, and there's a vote of no confidence coming in the Parliament later today. And in defending himself, he said, you shouldn't get rid of me, I'm so effective. Look, I changed the abortion law. So, I mean, it's something now that parliamentarians highlight on their CV as evidence of their bravery and their effectiveness.
That parliamentary man, is he woman or man? Female or male?
That parliamentarian, he's a man. Our Minister for Health, he really championed this issue, and has definitely got a lot of support for it. So did our Prime Minister, ended up coming out in a press conference with our Minister for Health, our Prime Minister, who are both men, who held a press conference basically to say that they were holding a referendum and they supported its passage, but would of course respect whatever the people voted for. We will say that, you know, in Ireland we had to put it to a national vote because in our country, that's the only way to change the constitution. But we don't recommend that as a method of law reform because
we won't do that.
yeah, okay, great. Yeah, it puts human rights to public vote, which shouldn't happen. But it was the only option for us. Yeah. But yeah, that's I don't know, a few details from our national context. And I'm happy to answer any questions or provide more information.
본격 소셜정치 미디어 금태섭TV